How is it possible that, in the absolute silence of the forest, a scent broke through fear and brought hope where all seemed lost? Imagine the muffled sound of leaves, the wind cutting through branches, and then, almost like a whisper, the attentive presence of a dog unfazed by the darkness. Have you ever been there? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. This isn't just another story about a missing baby. It's about instinct, courage, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. In the first second, I want you to feel the tension, the desperate search of the parents. Headlights illuminating narrow trails, volunteers calling names in the dark, and realize that, while most saw only trees and shadows, that dog perceived something we humans can no longer perceive without help. Tiny signs in the air, an olfactory trail that felt like a lifeline. In a few moments, that dog, a true four-legged hero, would transform a hopeless search operation into a thrilling rescue. I won't give it all away now, but pay attention to the detail that changed everything. It wasn't luck, nor chance, nor a simple, well-timed bark. It was the animal's keen sense of smell and calm amidst the chaos that allowed the baby to be discovered. As I describe the scene, imagine the paws touching the wet earth, the fur standing on end with every different scent, the nose pointing like a living compass. These are elements that every moving story about dogs saving lives carries, and in this particular case, they made the difference between utter despair and celebration. The tense and unresponsive community members saw in the dog's behavior a silent authority. Experienced volunteers and even rescue professionals recognized that something magical and at the same time deeply scientific was occurring. You might wonder how to trust an animal's intuition in critical situations. Perhaps you've seen viral videos of dogs that seem to have superpowers. Here, however, we'll go beyond the viral. We'll explore the real-life context, why scent works when all else fails, and why many search teams increasingly rely on these four-legged allies. Meanwhile, consider how often we underestimate environmental cues, a strange smell, a silence that becomes a clue, a look that warns, and how a trained dog, or even a domestic dog, can become the protagonist in a rescue operation. I want you to connect with the family who experienced every parent's worst nightmare, a baby disappearing in the woods. Feel the racing pulse, the puffy eyes, the hope wavering between belief and giving up. And then, hold on to that feeling, because the turning point is about to happen. A subtle movement, a restrained bark, a precisely tracked scent, details that transform fear into action. Audiences who love moving animal stories and believe in the power of dogs in critical situations will recognize the elements here that captivate their attention from beginning to end. Now that you've entered the atmosphere, the silence, the scent, the fear cut through by animal courage, get ready to follow in the next section the exact steps of that decisive moment, how the dog found the trail, who was with him, and the moment when everyone realized that the story could have a different ending than we feared. While you hold this air of anticipation with me, I want to ask you something sincere. If this story has touched you in any way, leave a comment below to tell us what touched you most. Whether you've witnessed something similar, or even if you have a dog at home who surprises you every day. Sharing your experience isn't just a gesture. It's about creating a support network and reminding others that these real stories happen and deserve to be heard. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below to tell us what touched you most. Because each comment helps other families and animal lovers find this message and better understand the role of dogs in critical situations. And if you're enjoying this type of content, it really helps when you like the video. A simple like helps more people discover stories like this, inspires those who work in rescue, and strengthens the community that believes in the power of animals. Subscribing to the channel is another valuable gesture. When you subscribe, you're saying you want to continue watching exciting stories, learn practical tips about safety in forested areas, and support projects that train search dogs. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. Here together, we build a space of respect, learning, and gratitude for four-legged heroes. Now, with your heart already attuned to the moment, let's return to the moment when everything changed. The dog's footsteps, the immediate reaction of those around him, and the exact second when hope reappeared. Night had already fallen when the silence of the forest began to become unbearable. The clock seemed to be ticking against time, each minute weighing like an eternity, and the family, gathered around the clearing, no longer knew whether to cry or scream the baby's name. Flashlights cut through the darkness, casting beams of light on the damp trees, but nothing concrete appeared. The searches dragged on, and with them grew the feeling that the forest held a hidden truth that no one could reach. The parents' hearts beat wildly, hope battled fear, and each second was a cruel reminder that the chances were diminishing. Anyone who has experienced a situation where time drags on knows the devastating impact of this wait. As volunteers divided into groups, shouts echoed, names were repeated, and the sound of footsteps on the wet earth mingled with the distant sound of snapping branches. It was as if the forest itself tested the mentality of everyone present, imposing a journey of patience, faith, and endurance. There were small children holding their parents' hands, neighbors who had never spoken to each other before now, walking side by side, all united by a single resolve, not to stop until they found the baby. The night chill seeped into their bones, their breath clouded the air, but no one gave up. What made everything even more distressing was the contrast between the intensity of the search and the emptiness of answers. Every path seemed to lead nowhere. Every attempt to follow footprints crumbled into the mud. Nature had the power to hide, to camouflage, and this revelation revealed the fragility of human beings in the face of such a vast and mysterious environment. Fatigue was mounting. Red eyes and exhausted bodies already showed signs of exhaustion. But the instinct to keep going spoke louder. In this scenario, the dog accompanying the family seemed strange to some. While everyone screamed, he remained silent, sniffing tirelessly, as if listening to something beyond the human ear's reach. This image aroused a silent curiosity. Could that dog's sense of smell really be more accurate than all the technology used in the search? Police officers with thermal flashlights, radios, and rescue strategies were there, but with each passing minute, the suspicion grew that the solution wouldn't come from the devices, but from something seemingly invisible, animal perception. It's at this point that the story takes on depth. It's not just a search operation, but a transformation in people's perspectives on what truly matters in critical moments. While the adults counted the hours and tried to control their despair, that dog walked as if carrying an invisible map, an instinct inherited from generations. And this detail moved everyone present. It was as if the forest itself had chosen an unlikely guardian to guide the outcome. The hours wore on, and with them silent dilemmas arose. How long could a baby survive alone in the cold? To what extent could hope sustain a family? These questions hung in the air like shadows, pressing every decision. Some believed there was no longer a chance. Others refused to accept the possibility. This tension divided opinions but united hearts. Each flashlight that was turned off to conserve battery was a cruel reminder that the night had a limit, and the next day could bring truths difficult to face. The dog, however, didn't seem tired. His eyes reflected the flashlights intensely, his nose always pressed to the ground, capturing scents imperceptible to everyone else. He moved with determination, ignoring the human chatter, as if he knew every second of hesitation was costly. It was then that many began to regard him not just as a pet, but as an invisible protagonist in their quest. This perception, this almost spiritual impact, caused some to pause for a moment to observe, almost in reverence. Gradually, the silence of the forest no longer seemed merely oppressive, but full of hidden signs. It was as if every fallen leaf held a message, every breath of wind a clue. Anyone who has experienced moments of despair knows that the mind begins to see beyond the obvious. And that's exactly what happened to that community. The revelation that there was something greater guiding every step. Whether they called it instinct, destiny, or providence, the fact is that the dog became, with each passing minute, the only thin line between anguish and the possibility of reunion. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because more than just a rescue itself, this story reveals behind-the-scenes stories of courage few know. It reveals how small, almost imperceptible decisions can change the course of an entire life. It reveals how a group's mindset can transform when hope seems lost. And most importantly, it reveals the impact of trusting in something beyond logic, in a silent force that can only be understood when we take a closer look at the connection between man and animal. This isn't just the narrative of a tense night. It's also a portrait of how human limits are challenged and how the improbable often becomes the only answer. And before we move on, I want you to join this conversation too. Comment, "This makes sense to me," if you've ever felt how time, silence, and decisions can weigh heavily in times of uncertainty. The cub was restless, but not uncontrollably so. Those who observed closely could see a method in every step, as if instinct were an invisible map to be followed. He would pause for seconds, lift his nose to the wind, and breathe deeply, capturing fragments of scent that meant absolutely nothing to humans. The silence of the forest was broken only by the rhythmic sound of his breathing and the rustling of leaves beneath his paws. It was at that moment that everyone sensed something unusual was about to happen. The flashlights illuminated only narrow patches of the ground, but the dog's eyes shone as if seeing beyond the darkness. Suddenly he stopped abruptly, his body still, his tail poised at attention. A short, restrained bark broke the heavy atmosphere and caused everyone around him to stop as well. People's hearts raced. It wasn't just any bark, it was a sign of discovery. Some volunteers looked at each other in disbelief, while the parents, tears already streaming uncontrollably, took 2 steps forward. It was at that moment that he took off down the trail, running in an almost straight line as if on an invisible command. Branches shifted around him, dry leaves flew behind him, and the sounds of the forest mingled with the hurried rhythm of his hooves. Those who followed him later described it as a run guided by something greater, as if the hidden truth everyone sought was within reach. But only he knew where to find it. The group advanced behind him, stumbling over roots and trying to keep up with his speed. Suddenly the dog braked and approached a pile of leaves near a fallen tree. The silence that followed was so intense, it felt almost sacred. He began sniffing in circles, scratching lightly at the ground, until his nose settled on a specific spot. The tension was unbearable. Time seemed to expand, each breath heard clearly. The parents stood still, unable to take a step, caught between the fear of what they would find and the hope that was beginning to resurface. A more experienced volunteer, a retired firefighter, approached cautiously, knelt down, and pushed aside some vegetation. The impact was immediate. The small, vulnerable body lay there, motionless, protected only by a few leaves. A shock ran through the entire group. For a second, no one breathed. The silence was broken by the sobs of one of the parents, who fell to his knees, and by the dog's gaze, fixed, attentive, as if he had accomplished the mission for which he was born. This moment was later described as a turning point, not only in the search, but also in the mindset of everyone present. Volunteers and teams confirmed that it was the animal's sense of smell that made the difference, not the technology they carried. One rescuer said in an interview, "You can have drones, digital maps, modern radios, but nothing replaces a dog's trained instinct in a life-or-death situation." This revelation spread quickly, reinforcing the idea that these four-legged heroes carry a silent but enormous power. While first aid was being administered, the dog remained nearby, panting but serene, watching every movement. It was as if he knew his journey wasn't over yet. The baby, still fragile, began to show signs of life, and relief washed over everyone like a wave. The initial shock gave way to tears of gratitude, and the mood of despair was slowly replaced by a collective sigh of hope. This episode left more than memories. It brought revelations about trust, the importance of decisions that seem small but carry immense weight, and how the connection between humans and animals can reveal forces that transcend logic. Every sensory detail, the perceived smell, the restrained sound, the steady gaze, composed a scene no one forgot. It was as if that dog had shown us the behind-the-scenes of a truth that was always before us. Nature, when respected and understood, can be our greatest ally on our journey. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened in that forest goes beyond simple rescue. It shows us how instinct, when combined with human trust, can transform destinies and rewrite stories that seemed doomed to tragedy. This is the fine line between being lost and being found, between giving up and carrying on, and it is in this space that true greatness reveals itself. Right there. I'm on this journey too. If you believe that moments like this carry lessons that go beyond the scene and reach a lifetime, the impact of that moment wasn't limited to the discovery. When the baby was pulled from the leaves, there was absolute silence, as if even the forest had held its breath to watch. The small body was cold, inert, but the watchful eyes of the volunteers knew that every second counted. One of them quickly knelt down, checking the vital signs, and another opened his coat to wrap the child in a desperate attempt to warm him. The mother advanced on trembling legs, held back by supportive arms, tears flowing without asking permission. Her cries, mixed with despair and hope, echoed like a plea for life. The dog remained steadfast, lying a few inches away, watching silently. His chest heaved with the exertion of his run. But his gaze conveyed serenity, as if to say, "I've done my part. Now it's yours." The father, who until then seemed petrified, fell to his knees beside the rescue team and, unable to contain his impulse, took the baby's tiny hand. It was at that precise moment that the first sign came. A barely perceptible movement in the chest, a fragile sound, the beginning of a low cry that soon became proof of life. The impact was immediate. Volunteers embraced. Some wept silently, others cried in relief. It was as if the entire weight of the night had dissolved in seconds. The community, which had plunged into despair, was now reborn in gratitude. The dog, still attentive, was stroked by trembling hands, receiving looks of recognition as the true hero of that night. The reunion between mother and son was overwhelming. She held him to her chest, warming him with her own tears, while the father enveloped them in a desperate embrace, as if promising never to let go. Shortly after, the ambulance arrived, its lights cutting through the darkness. Professionals took over care, wrapping the baby in thermal blankets, administering oxygen and monitoring signs. The doors closed, but the echo of that fragile cry had already brought life back to everyone there. The repercussions of the case began to spread that early morning, carrying not only the news of the rescue, but also the memory of how a dog was the connecting thread between tragedy and hope. Experts who analyzed the incident highlighted something important. Dogs perceive changes in the environment and signs of danger in a way that humans cannot. Veterinarian and trainer Alexandra Rossi, in similar situations, has explained that a dog's sense of smell can be up to 100,000 times more sensitive than ours, capable of identifying odors in minute concentrations. This explains why, in search operations, these animals are indispensable partners, capable of capturing the invisible and transforming a journey of uncertainty into possible reunions. This episode, besides saving a life, revealed things about trust, about decisions that seem simple but carry immeasurable impact. It showed that often, while we seek answers in the largest structures, the hidden truth can lie in the silent instinct of an animal walking beside us. The transformation that moment brought was not only for the parents, but for everyone who witnessed the scene. It was impossible to leave without rethinking the mindset with which we treat our four-legged companions. The dog was not just a helper, but a protagonist, a guardian who crossed the line between fear and hope. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the story didn't stop with the rescue. What came next brought lessons about community, about invisible bonds, and about how certain journeys reveal hidden depths of courage that are rarely seen. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If you also believe that trust between humans and animals can change the course of an entire story. The emotional reunion between the baby and the family left a profound impression on everyone present. But it also sparked a necessary reflection. What can we learn from an experience like this? The rescue was not only an act of canine heroism, it was also a call to rethink our attitudes toward risky situations and the way we organize our communities. When someone gets lost in the woods, every decision can mean life or death. The first piece of advice is simple yet powerful. Never enter an unfamiliar environment alone. Whenever possible, hike in a group, carry a charged cell phone, a flashlight, and appropriate clothing. Another essential practice is to keep someone informed of the route and estimated time of return. Small, seemingly minor details can prevent major tragedies. In missing person situations, calm is essential. Seeking landmarks, avoiding circling, and trying to stay in open areas are all measures that increase the chances of being found quickly. It was precisely the fact that the baby was in a more exposed area, albeit protected by leaves, that allowed the dog to locate the scent. This seemingly simple detail shows how nature can both hide and reveal. The dog's nose detected odors dispersing through the humid forest air, something the human mind would never perceive. This is where the importance of search and rescue dog training comes in. Many of these animals undergo specific programs where they learn to recognize human scents in a variety of conditions, from dense forests to urban areas devastated by natural disasters. Training involves repetition, positive reinforcement, and above all, patience. But even dogs that haven't been professionally trained can surprise. Instinct, combined with a connection with their owners, can reveal impressive abilities in critical situations. This is one of the rarely discussed behind-the-scenes aspects of these stories, the line between natural instinct and technical training that transforms an ordinary dog into a true hero. Furthermore, the community plays a crucial role. In that case, neighbors, volunteers, and authorities came together, demonstrating that when a life is at risk, differences are set aside and solidarity becomes the strongest bond. The impact of this unity goes far beyond the rescue itself. It strengthens bonds, awakens a sense of collective responsibility, and teaches that each person can make a difference. When everyone participates, whether by offering flashlights, food, information, or simply emotional support, the journey ceases to be a solitary one and becomes a collective movement. Another point worth highlighting is the mindset we take from these experiences. Often, we only value preventive measures after we've experienced something extreme. The disappearance of a child, for example, is a trauma no one wants, but it can become a wake-up call for dozens of other families. The hidden truth is that behind every prevented tragedy, there's a series of small choices and attitudes that could have made a difference much earlier. It's in this space of revelation that stories like this gain strength. They're not just moving tales, they're tools for collective transformation. The cub that found the baby didn't act by chance alone, but by a combination of instinct, perception, and courage. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson: to trust more in the signs around us, to recognize the value of partners we often underestimate, and to allow our decisions to be guided by care and empathy. It's an invitation to rethink our relationship with animals, with nature, and with the community itself. The final scene of this part of the story is powerful. The dog sitting beside the family, panting but calm, as if knowing its mission was accomplished. Human hands met, The baby lay wrapped in warmth and tears, and the silence of the forest, once suffocating, now seemed welcoming. It was the silence that called for help, and the scent that brought hope. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there are layers to this journey that reveal how the extraordinary hides in the simple, and how the impact of a single act can echo across generations. Write down, "I'm on this journey too." If you believe that stories like this have the power to transform the way we see our choices and connections, if you've made it this far, I want to sincerely thank you for following every detail of this story. It shows that this type of content resonates with you, and that's precisely why I continue to bring you narratives that inspire, move, and make us reflect. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, now is the perfect time, so you don't miss any of the upcoming stories that can touch your heart and bring valuable lessons. Also, please like this video, because it's through it that I understand the strength of the connection we've built together throughout this journey. And so I know you were with me until the end. Write in the comments, "I'm with you until the end." It will be incredible to see who really walked with you every step of this narrative. Now, if you want to continue immersing yourself in this universe and understand even more about the power of animals and the lessons they teach us, there's a video here that complements this topic. Click and stay with me there, because our conversation doesn't end here.